It's that time of the year again. It's grilling season, and I thought I took pretty good care of my griddle top Blackstone, but if you take a look, it could use a little fixing. So right here you have some rust, you have some of the stuff peeling up here, the seasoning. In the corners here, we got some buildup. Again, rust right here. There's a good spot right there that you can see. This stuff coming right off. So what I could do is I could refinish the entire surface, but that's a lot of work, and basically grinding it down to bare metal the entire way. This has been seasoned a couple times. Maybe I'll do that next year, but I just got this last year, so I don't want to go all out and totally refinish it. I'm just gonna kind of restore it a little bit. So first step, I'm gonna turn this thing on and let it heat up a little bit. So I'm gonna turn this on. I'm gonna do high heat and make sure those are all the way up. And then I'm gonna let this heat up for about 20 minutes and then I'll turn it off. Just as a note, do not leave this. You're not supposed to leave this down for too long. So this whole process, we're just gonna leave this up, get it nice and hot. So this has been heating up for about 20 minutes. You can see a little bit of color change in the rust. You're starting to see some of the oil come through here. So this is gonna loosen up all that rust and all the debris here. So now we can turn this off. And we're gonna let this grill completely cool down before we touch it. So this has cooled down quite a bit. It's still a little bit warm, but that's totally fine. I'm gonna take a scraper. You can use whatever you want. This is a Blackstone. And I'm just gonna scrape this down. I'm gonna start in the front, work my way back, and pull all this debris and drop it in the little catch right there. So here we go, scraping. You wanna make sure you get in these corners, especially over here. You want to make sure not to use any water. In fact, water is one of the culprits that makes this thing rust. So just scrape this dry. I'm going to make sure I get the sides pretty good, along with this corner. Here's where we need a lot of attention. This is basically the main cooking area. Scrape all that right off. Look at all that rust. You might want to try and go at a couple different angles with this, because this isn't getting a whole lot of it this way, but you might get some going this way. If you have to, it might help to take this cover right off. You can really get in there. Okay. Okay, so this looks a lot worse than when we started, but that's totally fine. Just expect that that's gonna happen. It's gonna get worse before it's gonna get better. But now that it's all scraped down, the next step is gonna be to add some oil and use a Blackstone cleaning brick. You can use whatever oil you want. I'm gonna use olive oil. You can use canola oil, vegetable oil. There is also a refinishing oil that Blackstone has, but you can just use regular oil. So what I'm gonna do is just pour a little oil on here. And then I'm gonna take my cleaning brick and I'm gonna clean this real good. Just spread that oil around, cover the whole thing. And really, I wanna concentrate where all this rust is. I'm gonna do the whole thing. But this is gonna help to loosen all that up. You see how that oil is turning all rusty? Just wanna clean this whole thing real good. And again, you wanna do this when it's cool and use oil, not water. Okay, I'll concentrate on the big stuff, the big rust spots, and then I'll do the same thing, go to the front and work my way back. Do some circular motions, make this all nice and even. I'm gonna start in the front and work my way over here. Now, I think for now, we're good with this. So I'm just gonna wipe this down. Put that aside. Now, if you need to, you can just take that off of the holder. But what I'm gonna do is take another stone, a brand new one. The reason for that is because with this thing, you really can't get in here too well on the sides because this gets wider. So the handle starts not working, where it does work in the front, but it's not gonna work back here. That way I can get these sides, get a little oil on here. Get in here. I'll have one more go around the whole thing here. Make sure we're good. All right, and I probably should have told you, you're gonna get dirty. Sorry, should have mentioned that earlier. Clean this down. Make sure you have plenty of paper towels on hand. Cool, now I'm gonna scrape off most of this stuff. I'm not gonna put a lot of pressure on, I'm just gonna gather this stuff. Now I'm gonna take some paper towels and I'm just gonna wipe this all down and try and get all this oil off of here, all this rust that we've created. And this is especially why you don't want to do it while the griddle's hot. So that's one wipe down to get all that oil off. And you can see there's still brown here. Once you take a clean paper towel and clean it like this with a little more oil, that brown will start to come off. I think this area is good, but if you look over here, this right here, the rust, I don't think I hit it as good. If you wipe it, the brown does come off, but there's still more under there. So I'm gonna hit that with the stone and oil again, and right here, the seasoning, you can see different layers. I'm gonna try and get that a little more even so that we don't have issues when we go to season it again. Just repeat the process until you get all these spots. And it's okay if you start seeing the silver come through here. You just basically want to get all that rust out of there so it doesn't come back. So you have three layers. You have the seasoning layer, you have the rust layer in spots, and then you have the nice bright and shiny silver right here. which is how the Blackstone originally came before you seasoned it. So just use this block, use this oil. This is a little dry. This should have more oil. And then get it down as much as you can. So like I said, the rust doesn't come back. We'll wipe this down again. Basically want to keep doing it until there's no color on here, until the paper towels are clean. Okay guys, let's take a close look at this. I think I didn't season this properly. I think I put it on too thick. And what you see here is some seasoning. And then you have the metal here. The rust seems like it's gone, but there definitely could be some under here, and this could flake off and just start doing what it was doing before. So at this point, I almost decided to season this, but instead, I'm gonna try and get this down more so this doesn't happen again. You might not wanna do this, but I'm gonna use a sander. I have a brand new sander that I wasn't intending on using for this, but what better way to test it out than on here and try and get all this stuff off. And then we'll season it and bring it back to life. Let's give it a shot. Again, you could use this, but that's gonna take a long time. So I'm gonna use this. I'm not gonna use oil because I think it's gonna make an absolute mess. So I'm gonna use 60 grit and see what it does with this stuff. See if it comes off easy. If it comes off easy with this, then it's probably, like I said, gonna chip up and I'm gonna have this issue all over again. See, I can scrape it off with my fingernail. And I don't even have fingernails. Let's see. Perfect example. See, when I got that off, that's rust right there. So I definitely want to get that off or I'm gonna have all kinds of issues going forward. All right. All right. I'm so happy I did that. That got pretty much everything off. And this thing worked good because it got in the corners. Just as a note, that's gonna clog up really fast. So it's up to you. You can do it the hard way, like I was doing before. Just do that over and over again, or you can make your life a little easier. But now I'm gonna scrape this down, get all this stuff off. I'm gonna oil it again, and I'm gonna use the brick, the cleaning brick one more time, and then clean it completely. And then we should be good to go. Now, hopefully, because I learned my lesson, all I'm gonna have to do next time is use this. Nice, even coats. I'll say it again when I go to season it, just so you know. Nice and even and thin. And that is way better. More oil. And if you want to, you can go even crazier than this. You're not going to hurt anything because this is cast iron. It would take a lot of effort to ruin this thing. It's nice and smooth. Just a tiny bit more oil. That's not looking too bad. You want it to be pretty clean. I mean, it's gonna keep, you know, you're gonna keep getting stuff on here unless you go down to the bare metal, but this looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna start this back up, but I'm not gonna crank the heat. I'm gonna just turn it on Right about halfway. Just want it a little warm when we season it. Okay, get the seasoning. Now, since this is hot, be careful doing this. If you have to use tongs, I'm going to use just a paper towel. I'm going to use this Blackstone Griddle seasoning and cast iron conditioner. So it says right here, 17-inch to 22-inch, use a tablespoon, 28-inch, 2 tablespoons, 36-inch, 3 tablespoons. Now, I am just going to grab it like this, but remember, really thin coats, really, really thin coats. Don't let it pool up anywhere, wipe it down, and apply it while it's warm. Nice and even. Make sure you cover the entire surface. Don't forget the sides. I'm just going to do a little swipe, swipe. Okay, now we're going to crank this up on high heat and let it burn off. And it's going to smoke a little bit, and you basically want to let it go until it stops smoking, maybe 15 minutes or so. Crank it up, and you're going to do this 3 to 4 times. Now see all this white smoke? That's a good thing. And if you notice it starting to change color, that is also a good thing. You basically want to burn off all this smoke before you shut it down, and you want the griddle to turn like a matte black. So it's been about 20 minutes. It stopped smoking. So now I'm going to shut this down completely and let it cool. So this is cooled down, but it's still warm. And I'm going to leave it like this off while it's warm and apply the second coat and just do the same thing. Really thin. Okay, the sides. Now we can crank the heat. Let it burn off. Stop smoking. Second coat is done. Turn it off, let it cool down completely. Cooled down but still warm. Third coat. Now we'll crank the heat. Okay, now we can turn that off once it stops smoking. Let it cool. So you can repeat that process between 3 and 5 times, and you should only have to do that once. The main thing to consider is to maintain that. And the way to do that is every time you cook, you clean it, scrape it, get the food off while it's still hot, let it cool down completely, and then add some cooking oil, a nice coat over the whole thing. This, around the edges, you can see if there's like coloring, and right here, it almost looks like it got too hot because all of these burners are right here and they don't really extend all the way. So it gets really hot right here, it burns that off. And around the edges, if it's a different color or anything, that's okay. The more you cook on it, the more it's gonna be seasoned. The important thing is that this is all nice and smooth and flat. And you'll know if you have to redo this. Like I said, you should only have to do this once. You'll know when you have to redo it if you start seeing rust or if you start seeing stuff flake off. So keep an eye on that, maintain it, and I think don't do what I did and put it on really thick and at very high heat, and I was doing it every time I cook. So hopefully this video helped if you had a griddle that looked like mine. Thanks for watching. And then make sure you dispose of all of your oily paper towels properly.